everybody to part 3 of the ACE Reports video blog series, and we are talking about the Limerick nuclear power plant. In part 1 we mentioned the whitewashing by the NRC about the hazards and problems related to the nuclear power plant. In part 2, if you're just joining us, we talked about the dangerous water pollution that's being caused in the Schuylkill River by the nuclear power plant. And in part 3, we're going to be talking about the dangerous air pollution harms that harm health. I'm here with Donna Cuthbert from ACE, the Alliance for a Clean Environment, and I'm Nick Lawrence. In case you're just joining this series, this is a 4-part series. Please watch all 4 parts because they're all related to each other. So Donna, dangerous air pollutions from the nuclear power plant. We just talked about how toxic the water is coming out of the plant and what's happening to the Schuylkill River, but we can't ignore the air.
No, and they're trying very hard to ignore the air. As a matter of fact, Nick, it is outrageous that they would call Limerick nuclear plant's air pollution impacts small. The kind of air pollution coming out of Limerick has very harmful health effects. And as a matter of fact, just the fact that Limerick nuclear plant is considered a major air pollution source under health-based standards of the Clean Air Act, that alone says that the impacts are not small. So, I mean, that whole thing is like totally ridiculous. We provided ACE, provided NRC with a really comprehensive view from Limerick's Title V air pollution permit in November of 2011, which NRC in this environmental impact statement just totally flat out ignored. They ignored all the evidence of major air pollution. You know, when we're talking about air pollution from the nuclear plant, we're talking about radiation, radioactive air particulates, and we're also talking about the Schuylkill River toxics, because all the toxics that they withdraw from the Schuylkill River go right out the cooling towers into our air. There's no filter for any of the toxics in the river. Plus, it's even worse. Every day, Exelon adds massive amounts of highly corrosive and toxic chemicals to those cooling towers, which also get released.
So the cooling tower is the only source of the release from a power plant other than the water?
No, but there are 2 others that I want to go at. Pathogens are also released because you know when that it's really hot in the cooling towers, and pathogens are a problem, and they are also released into our air with Limerick's cooling towers. Plus, they're also on the site. You were asking about other sources.
Right.
There are actually 32 different air pollution sources on the site. These are all the different air pollution sources listed in their permit.
Because I think people think that it's only the cooling tower. What they see is steam. They see that as air pollution, but we're not. We need to talk about these other sources as air pollution as well.
Well, as it turns out, they have like 3 boilers and generators and tanks and degreasing stuff and the emergency spray pump. But the problem is, Nick, the worst of all of the air pollution from Limerick is really the cooling towers.
Sure.
Those cooling towers are really, really dangerous. I mean, when you look at the synergistic and the additive and the cumulative impacts from all those toxics released every day from that place, in 42 to 44 million gallons of water every day are released from the cooling towers, and it carries with it, transports all these dangerous toxics with it. And the fact of the matter is, Nick, you know, when NRC says that the impacts are small, they just flat out lie. Limerick in 2009, when they applied for their Title V permit renewal, they actually asked for and got a 6-fold permit increase in PM10 air pollution from the cooling towers.
What is PM10?
Particulate matter.
Okay.
Those are the tiny particulates that we breathe in. It gets into your lungs and then into your bloodstream. And PM10 is a transporter of toxics. That carries with it all the other toxics that are in the cooling towers. So within the particulate matter, all this toxic material that get into your body through the PM10. And you know what's really interesting about that? That the American Lung Association put out a report in 2009 to 2011, where they said that particulate matter, this is what we're talking about. Limerick got a 6-fold increase of
Right.
particulate matter in their permit. That is actually more lethal than ozone, according to the
Wow.
American Lung Association. So I mean, we have to know that it's not small impacts. These are enormous impacts when they actually got a huge permit increase for
So
this deadly kind of pollution.
It's interesting to me, though, we think in terms of air pollution as something we breathe, which it is, but what goes up comes down. So it falls onto the earth. People plant crops into that. It gets into the water. I mean, it's not only by breathing air pollution. If it's particulate, to me, that lands on the earth. If you're planting crops, it gets on the food. I mean, it gets into us more than just by breathing it.
Yes, exactly. As a matter of fact, air pollution really is a way that your whole life support system gets
Exactly,
contaminated.
yeah.
So what comes out of those cooling towers is enormous. I mean, it's huge. And the thing is, when we talk about PM10 health impacts, Nick, the harmful health effects, we've been talking about these for a long, long time. Increased heart attacks. It's not just your lungs. It increased the thing for heart attacks, strokes, asthma, of course, inflames the lungs like sunburn. That was a concept that was really interesting to me. And it increases respiratory disease, decreased lung function, increases hospital admissions, increases emergency room visits. So imagine the increased costs
Right, to everyone.
to health care
Right.
and everything coming from this massive amount of particulate matter released from the cooling towers. But Limerick actually has other sources of particulate matter in addition to the cooling towers. While they're far and away the largest, they have there are several sources that are coming from, like, the boilers, generators, and emergency spray
One of the
pump.
things that was interesting, in our last segment, when I was talking to Dr. Cuthbert about this, there are no filters for water pollution. There are no filters on the water portion of the power plant. Well, now we're talking about air pollution. Are there filters for that? Are they
No.
filtering that at all?
There is nothing. There is no air pollution filtered whatsoever at the Limerick nuclear plant
So
site.
they don't filter the water, and
They don't filter the
air.
boilers.
Or
They don't filter they filter nothing. And it's even worse than that. You know, you have all this particulate matter coming out of the cooling towers and these other 3 sources right at the Limerick site. There is no testing for particulate matter at all by anybody. So how we know what's coming out of there is that Exelon gets to estimate they estimate and calculate what these particulate
Without
matter
any
emissions-
proof, they just
No proof.
they pull something
No
out of the air.
proof.
We'll
They-
say. No
that's
pun
it. They
intended.
estimate and proof. They make up these things the way they do that, and I mean, it is really flat out ridiculous. That's all I can just say about that. And during the safety evaluation report, NRC has been sending Exelon all these letters. They find this, they find that. Some of those are really interesting. We'll have another video blog on that. But what we found about the cooling towers just blew my mind. When I read this, I didn't even know what to say or do. They found NRC staff, the people that do these evaluations, they write to Exelon and they say, we are really concerned because the corrosive matter from the cooling towers, chlorine specifically, is corroding steel at nuclear plants. And the steel at Limerick, there is a lot of corrosion problem there. And so, as a matter of fact, what's really interesting is NRC validated what they said by saying that at other nuclear plants, it's industry known that this air pollution from the cooling towers can corrode steel in a matter of 4 to 52 weeks. That's what NRC said to Exelon. So you know what Exelon writes back, and they say to NRC, well, you really shouldn't be concerned about that because the cooling tower plume is directed away from the site.
Okay.
All right. Now, I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm thinking about all these kids and all these people breathing this chlorine that can crack stainless steel into their lungs.
So the steel at the plant could be fine, but the people who live around the plant or beyond the plant will get sick. I mean, look, I'm just
And
thinking.
the steel isn't even fine at the
No,
plant.
exactly. But
But-
chlorine? Isn't that bleach?
Yes,
Don't
yes.
we use chlorine
Oh,
bleach? Don't
chlorine,
we? So
yeah.
if it's in the air and we're breathing it, that means on some level it's rusting my pipes. It's doing something to me.
That's
right?
exactly the point. And that's what infuriated me so much.
Amazing.
That NRC says, okay. So obviously, NRC doesn't care what it's doing to residents' lungs or cars or outdoor furniture or anything else that this highly corrosive air. You know, what's really amazing about that is that every day now, Limerick uses 16,000 to 58,000 pounds of sodium hypochlorite, which is chlorine. Now, how much of that goes into the cooling towers, it's anybody's guess, but it's going somewhere.
Well,
A lot of it goes into the cooling towers because they have a lot of stuff to kill in there.
And people put chlorine in their pools, don't they, to kill bacteria and things like that? So what is that doing to what's inside of us? We know we're a combination. We use probiotics and things because of the living things within us. Who knows what that's doing to us? We really don't know. I don't want to be an alarmist, but we should be aware of these things.
We should be aware of it, and I guess I really am concerned because, you know, we did a health survey, if you recall, and the lung cancers were off the charts. Lung problems, lung cancers. We had so many people call us, and from the Limerick area in specific, that said that, you know, one woman called, she said, my son died in his early 20s, never smoked, from lung cancer, never smoked a cigarette. We don't smoke in our house. She said nobody ever smoked around me, but he died from lung cancer. There are many such stories. But I remember when we did our cancer map, there were so many lung cancers, Nick, we couldn't even put them on our map because it would have covered up all the streets.
Really?
There were 500 lung cancers that we had found that we couldn't even map on there, and there were hundreds more after we completed the mapping, the search for the lung. So lung cancer is a huge issue, and never before till we understood about the air pollution, because as we always said before, you know, still at these NRC meetings we've gone to just this year, NRC officials are down there telling residents that it's only steam coming out of those cooling towers, nothing but steam, like your tea kettle is what they tell people. It is shameful, it is ridiculous, and I can only say that I think that people need to get involved now. Anybody who sees this, tell your neighbors, tell your family what is going on. Go to our website, www.acereport.org. Look at the air pollution section. Look at the information in this video blog, and tell everybody you know about it, and tell your elected officials that it's time for them to start looking at closing this facility now. When they close Limerick, the day they close Limerick, all that cooling tower air pollution stops, and the health risks that we face from it, and the costs that are involved from the unnecessary health care will be minimized because that place closes.
So before the power plant was built, there must have been some level of lung cancer. Since the power plant is built, it's going up dramatically from what you're telling us.
All cancers will have, which we'll discuss.
They've all gone up,
They've
right.
all gone up.
But lung cancer itself.
But there are a lot of lung problems too. I
Right.
mean, these kids in the schools, if you talk to any of the school nurses, I mean, there was one school nurse who had a field day where, I don't know, so many kids passed out on her. I mean, it's tragic, and it's the children that I really worry about. You know, there are a lot of studies that prove that air pollution is really dangerous, and far more dangerous even for our children.
Of course.
So, I mean, there's all kinds of studies that prove the links between the health problems and children, and so people really need to get involved. We can stop this. I mean, this needs to stop now. There are a lot of reasons Limerick should close, but in my opinion, my view, health impacts.
Health impacts. So
are the
we're
real
going to
key.
take up the whole idea of cancer, skyrocketing cancer rates, in our next part of the series, folks. Stay tuned for part 4 of our video blog series, and go to acereport.org for all the information. We'll be right back.